Okay, so the Supreme Court decision today is a major blow to the administration, but there are still so many issues facing the president, some he might prefer not to talk about. You guessed it, Jeffrey Epstein. The nightcap is still here, so let's talk about it. Okay, it has now been 3 weeks since 3 million pages that were extraordinarily difficult to even sift through have been released. They're not going away. And more stories are only coming out day by day as we're decoding all of these emails. Where's this thing headed? Because you bet your bottom dollar there are going to be Epstein victims at that State of the Union on Tuesday night.
I don't think it's going anywhere, and I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. I know Jim speaks to a lot of the survivors and a lot of the folks involved in this, and it seems to me that this is one that it's going to be very, very difficult for the president personally and the administration generally to ever crawl out from under. I mean, when you have someone like a Sean Ryan, who has a very popular podcast that appeals to that sort of bro class, and he is on Twitter every day saying, how can we be the people that protect pedophiles? How can that be who we are? When you have Massey out there, now look, Thomas Massey is a pretty cuckoo. I'm not going to get invited to his house anytime soon, but when he's the one out there and you're just chipping away at the base of MAGA, remember that Epstein was foundational to MAGA. He was a part of it. Trump was going to peel the onion back and make sure everybody who was involved was going to get what was coming to. And now what can you say? He's just like the rest of them.
Yeah. I mean, I call it Epstein Gate on my show, and it deserves a gate. This is a cover-up. This is a government cover-up, and it's been going on since last July when Pam Bondi and Kash Patel said, nothing to see here, and they tried to sweep it under the rug. And think of what would have happened if we had just left it at that. Think about all of the consequences that we would not have seen had it not been for the bravery of these survivors that we've seen push this issue to the forefront. And it's gotten to the point now where we're, I think, starting to see some consequences, and it's long overdue. I mean, we're seeing former Prince Andrew getting hauled into the authorities in Great Britain. I mean, Steph, not to go back to, you know, some bad euphemisms and so on, but I mean, to me, it is time for us to get over this notion that we can't prosecute and jail presidents in this country. And I think that the facts need to be followed wherever they lead. And if the facts lead to Donald Trump having some sort of culpability or criminal behavior on his part as it relates to the Epstein files, I think we have to let the chips fall where they may.
Catherine?
When I go, and I've been going through the files.
Which is really hard
It's hard to do.
For people watching at home just saying, let me know what's in it. Cumbersome is a gross understatement.
And I'll look for one name, and then I'm shocked. I'll find an email of someone actually I know professionally, and I'm like, and I look and I say, Jeffrey Epstein knew who he was? And I'm not saying that they did anything illegal, but it's shocking. And there is an Epstein class, and what I mean by that, do all wealthy and powerful people know each other? It's like, you know, Naomi Campbell, supermodel, black supermodel from Britain, you know, she's in the files, again, not doing anything illegal, but there's something in criminal law called conscious avoidance, where you deliberately avoid, you know, something that's right in your face. And so the CEO who testified the other day,
Les Wexner,
Les Wexner,
you know,
can I just ask, how come when he gets deposed, they all fly to Ohio to his mansion on our taxpayer dollars? Why doesn't he have to go to Washington?
They'll argue that he's 88 and he couldn't. He was under the weather.
Let's be clear, he wasn't flying Southwest.
Yeah, that too. But, you know, I didn't know. But this wasn't like a fleeting business arrangement. So this was deliberately avoiding something was right in your face. And that's what a lot of these people who were in the Epstein world, you know, legitimate people, you know, the Larry Sumners, the Brad Karp, who he may no longer be chair of Paul Weiss, but he still works there. Yeah. He still works there.
What about all these administration officials?
Yeah.
I mean, Lutnick lying about, you know, not having that many contacts with Jeffrey Epstein, but he had taken his family, his own children, and the nannies.
We don't know that he did anything wrong.
No,
but it was so unnecessary to go on a podcast 6 months ago and straight up lie about it.
Yeah. What I found strange, and again, this is a personal anecdote, and I'm not even sure how relevant Clinton is, other than the fact I've been in financial news for 34 years on the East Coast, 7 years on the West Coast. In the 34 years that I've been out here, and I know a lot of people who knew Jeffrey Epstein, no one ever mentioned his name to me as a financial genius and somebody I need to talk to about money and markets, which means this was so sub rosa. It was so, under the surface that there was no one willing to say, you got to go talk to this guy. Right? Because there had to be something wrong. For that not to happen, I've had people recommend other people to me as sources or, guests or what have you in that space. And he was simply not one of them. And so it strikes me as odd for someone who's worth $500 million doing Leon Black's taxes for $158 million, handling Les Wexner's multi-billion-dollar estate, and no one brought him up. It just tells me that, he was a different character.
So what does the White House do with this?
I mean, they're going to.
And what could the impact of Bill and Hillary Clinton testifying do?
Well, I mean, Bill and Hillary, they're both very good at that, right? If we remember back, was it 2008 or 2016 when they hauled her up for Benghazi and she was just like, are you done? And she exhausted them. I think President Clinton is we know, is very, very good at these sorts of things. And I think they probably opened a Pandora's box. They're like, oh, wait a second. Now former presidents can be called to testify. And so I'm sure that Trump would like nothing more than them to hide in New York again. But what are they going to say? I don't know what they're going to say. But here's what I know is that they are very good at what they do. These members of Congress, particularly the Republican members on this committee, are not very bright, and they're likely to be made to look stupid.
But Donald Trump should be deposed in all of this. I'm old enough to remember Bill Clinton being hauled in. Remember that?
Jones.
That's a different time.
But there's a precedent for it, for calling in the President of the United States to sit down for a deposition. And it seems to me there's plenty of evidence in these files to warrant the same thing to be done with Donald Trump. And I think this all goes back to these survivors. We were talking with one of the survivors back in the green room. I've talked to them on my show. They are desperate to be taken seriously, and they deserve accountability. They deserve justice. What's wrong with us as a country?
Look, I don't know if it was a privileged conversation that we had with her or not. It wasn't exactly on the record, but it wasn't exactly off the record. What she had to say was deeply disturbing. And
you have a daughter, and you heard what this young woman said.
Yeah.
The blood would drain out of your face.
And she, to a certain extent, implicated at least one or two extremely prominent people as part of the network. So,
But Ron, I know we have to go to commercial, but on one hand, the Eat the Rich, movement is rooted in affordability, but it's also rooted in this idea that in this country there are two levels of government. There is a class of people that operate with completely different rules, and the more we learn about this behavior, it is only going to incense this movement more.
Yeah, and look, I've begun to argue that there's two separate economies, and as Jim was indicating earlier, there is an oligarchy.
Justice system.
That's right.
Which has been around for
Elon Musk.
And now it's right out there in the open.
Elon Musk is going to become a trillionaire this year. Right? And then you have other people who can't.
Also in the Epstein files.
Also in the Epstein files. Even though he said, no, I'm not going to be in there. Didn't know him at all until he visited SpaceX.